Right, okay. Hello and welcome to this webinar on the dark web and how breaches could affect your business. So this webinar is broken down into three different parts. So firstly, I'll be explaining what the dark web is and what the threats are to your business. Then we're going to go in and we'll have a Q&A session where you can ask me multiple questions on anything that you come up with. And please, as we're going through the initial part, please do comments in the chat. And then the third part is then when I'm finally going to run through some dark web scans. So I'll do some free scans for you all. So if you do want me to do some dark web scans, then all you need to do is in the chat just put your domain and we'll run a dark web scan for you, and then I can go through and you can have a look and see how at risk you are. So, but as I say, do use the chat throughout, ask any questions, and as I say, put in your domain name. So domain name being, for example, Syn-Star's is syn-star.co.uk. So whatever your main business domain is. If you've just got, say, a Gmail account or a Hotmail account, that won't work, because obviously if we were to do a dark web scan on Gmail, then it would probably be about 10,000 pages. So so just if you've got a main company domain that's your own private domain. So first of all, what is the dark web? So let's start with the basics. The dark web isn't some secret portal that only hackers in basements use. It's just part of the internet that isn't indexed by Google, and that's the important thing. So it means that it's hidden from normal search, and you need special software to access it. If you wanted to delve into the deep web, then you'd need special software. Things like Tor are the main ones, but you can obviously do a search on Google to tell you which software you'd need. But this isn't necessarily about you searching the dark web. It's really understanding what the dark web is and what the threats are. And also, most of the dark web isn't even illegal. So you use the dark web every day if you do things like internet banking. Because again, with internet banking, for example, you don't want that search to be searchable within Google. So a lot of the stuff, over 80% of internet traffic is actually on the dark web. So, you know, it's a very good place for the majority of it, but obviously there's certain aspects. So, but the problem is that there are parts that are illegal. That's where stolen passwords, credit card details, company logins, all sorts of data is traded. So it's sold or given away for free on the dark web. So think of it, it's a bit like the black market. It's a bit like a car boot sale for cyber criminals. So except for, obviously, it's your information that's being sold. But why does this matter? So cyber criminals are harvesting and selling business data. So essentially, it's how does the data, the important data that your business has got in various guises, whether it's, as I say, passwords and login information, whether it's physical files and folders, whether it's actual client data, but it's all about that data will be hijacked from your network and then it will be sold on the dark web. So, but how does the data end up there? So usually it starts with something really simple, like a phishing email, a reused password maybe, a staff member that's logging on using a personal device that hasn't got any security. And once a hacker gets hold of one login, they'll then test it across multiple platforms. Things like Microsoft 365, payroll software, if you've got different software like CRM systems, absolutely any type of accessible software, they'll try and use those credentials to get brute force access to them. So, and then when they find out that it works, they then bundle up all of those credentials and they sell them in bulk. So essentially, what will happen is you'll get the hackers that will find, whether it's, I don't know, tens of thousands of usernames and passwords are the main thing that's most important to your business. So an example would be you've got, let's say, 20 staff. So that's 20 different email addresses. And that's also, you imagine that each employee, let's say they've got 20 different logins for different things. That's 240 potential password and login information for your business. Now, the big issue is whether they're properly managed. And this is what I'm going to talk about. But in essence, at the moment, it's all about what information could your business have that is being leaked. And then it's how then someone will buy the data, and then it's how they're going to use it. So what happens when your staff's credentials appear there? So when your company's credentials show up on the dark web, it's basically an open invitation for criminals. They'll use these logins for credential stuffing attacks. They'll send out lots of spoof emails pretending to be your staff, or they'll try and access your systems directly. So they're the main things. But often it's not just one person, it's multiple employees. And this is all where their different passwords are being reused. And the scary part is that it doesn't just compromise the person, it compromises the entire business. Because if they can gain access to one part of the business, then often they can gain access to the rest of it. And the extra scary part at the moment is that AI has hugely increased the risk. Because previously they would have to have manual systems for doing this, for trying to get the data and then hack in. Whereas now with AI, they can effectively attempt to log into thousands of sites within seconds. So it really is about managing what passwords, login information, and the way that people are using it. Now, it's not just a case of coming up with, if you see a password, maybe change it. It's about trying to get your entire organisation understanding that if passwords are breached, then, what could happen. So, and the thing is, it's not necessarily in this day and age, it's not a question of not being breached. It's a question of understanding if you do, as and when you are going to get breached, it's minimising the disruption for that. So, what's the solution? Dark web monitoring is the only way that you can really stay on top of the game so we need to find out what you've got today on the dark web, but then it's all about monitoring it for the future, so that you need to work on the basis of cybersecurity that we can only do what we can do. But things like password management is so important. And the reason is because let's assume that you've got a person that uses the same password in 3 places, then they could potentially gain access in 3 different ways. So with dark web monitoring, it's effectively like having a burglar alarm for your data. It's constantly scanning the dark web. Then if anything shows up, anything new comes up, any of those credentials, then you can jump on it, you can replace the password, you can make sure that everything's updated. But the other issue that you've got is that even using multi-factor authentication isn't necessarily going to be a bulletproof protection for you. And the reason is because mobile phone networks are actually relatively easy to be hacked. But it's about having that combination of login details, passwords, and then the multi-factor authentication. But just one of our bits of advice really is, first of all, make sure that you've got password managers in place. What a password manager will do is it will make sure that there's never a password used in more than once. So then, if there is a breach, it's really kept down to a minimum. And what you definitely don't want to do is have a spreadsheet with passwords on it. Because again, that's one of the first things they'll do. Because the way that hackers use it is if they can get into something, they've got tools that can just blitz through any software and scan things as quick as possible, trying to hunt for extra information. So again, with the dark web, it's all about if we can understand where you are at the moment, what login information is potentially being traded, then that means that we can try and get the jump start on anyone that's actually trying to currently break into your network. But remember as well, it's not a person that's trying to break in, it's a computer. And they will try and break in to anything that's available online. So if you don't have these sorts of protections in place, then that computer, once it's got your details, it will just continue and continue and continue. So you just need to be really careful. And if we can actually see what's on the dark web, then that really gives us a really good opportunity to be able to update any passwords and make sure that any of the older passwords that you may have been using 15 years ago are definitely not in use today. So before we move on to the questions and answers, because obviously the thing is with the dark web, it's a massive subject, so it's really difficult for me to cover exactly everything that people want. Hence why we've got the questions and answers, and then as I say, I'll do you a dark web scan if there's anyone on there. But before we get to that, do please feel free to connect with me. That's my email address. More than happy for you to email me directly if you've got any questions, or a good place to find me is on LinkedIn. And again, I do quite a lot of updates and things like that on there around cybersecurity and other bits and pieces. So if you do, feel free to drop a follow on LinkedIn, or as I say, Syn-Star itself is on all of the major social media platforms. So right, so let's jump into the Q&A. Right, here we go. Let's have a look through the chats. Right, so we've got a couple of dark web scans that are going to come through. Right, is this the same? Oh, I've got a question from Karen. It's is this the same as a pen test? No, it's completely different. So a network penetration test is effectively where it's got all of your machines, and they will try and get into your devices. So that's more of a brute force. Whereas with this dark web monitoring, this is really any information that's already been stolen. We'll find out about it. So an example is, you may see on the news, let's say a big company has had a data breach, and what they'll often report on is they've had a data breach and they've had 10,000 customer records may have been compromised. So what that is imagine you try and break into, let's say, Amazon for argument's sake. Everyone's got an email address and a password. So if I can break into Amazon and I can find out what everyone's email address and password is, I can then use some kind of computer bot to then try and log in to, all the other time of online shopping, for example. So, if you've got AO.com, for example, and I've already got someone's login details for Amazon, I'll then try and do a brute force login with all the other websites. Because there was a study done, and over 90% of people still use the same password in at least 5 places. And this is what the hackers know. So it's all about, if I'm able to get hold of one of your email addresses and passwords, guess what? I'm then going to try and see if you've been using them anywhere else. And that's what it's all about. So, and often, as I say, some people will use the same password. And remember as well, this is a bot that's doing it. So if your password is, I don't know, let's say it's your favourite colour, so it's green, and we've stolen a password and it's green 123. Well, the bot will straight away, because it knows that keyword, it will first of all try the standard password on everywhere. Then it will try it with a capital G. Then it will try it with a 012. Then it will try it with a 0123. Because it knows the human brain thinks in certain ways. And this is where it's so powerful with these bots, because, and again, with the AI side of things, the AI computer is going to try and think in the same way that you do. It's not the same way that a computer thinks. So That's how it tries it. So just the fact of if you've got a similar password that you use, but you change the odd character here and there, that still isn't good enough, because these bots, they can try 1,000 different sequences. And this is the really important thing, you see. It's not just about trying to trick a computer in a quick way. But yeah, in answer to the question, no, network penetration test is completely different. That's how safe and secure is your... Imagine again, let's use the burglar alarm analogy. How safe and secure is your house? You might have a front door that's got 20 bolts in it, but if you've left one of the windows open, then someone's going to still try and get in through there. So that's what a network penetration test is. Whereas with dark web monitoring, this is, has anyone got hold of a password and an email address sequence from your business? If so, most of the time we can actually tell what the password is as well. So then it means you can be like, you've got the email address, so you can go to that person and say, right, do you recognise this password? And if you do, please, go and update your password to everywhere else, is the thing. Right, let's have a look. Here we go. I've got a question. So I heard a security advisor once say that having a highly secure, long, e.g. 25 character password is more secure than having different passwords for each app, etc. Once memorised, you don't need to store this anywhere. His logic was that if you have different passwords, you won't remember them. Right, okay, so this person, the greatest of respect, hasn't got yeah, they're wrong. You should definitely always have a different password. Now, fine, their theory of if you remember the password, you don't need to write it down. Then yes, that's good, but that's an old way of thinking. The reason is that you don't know who's going to be hacked. So at the moment, for example, let's say you're with Barclays Bank, you trust Barclays Bank that's not going to get hacked. But we all know on the the news at the moment, you look at Jaguar Land Rover, you look at Marks and Spencer's, all of them, they've been hacked. So when they say they've been hacked, what is probably happening is one of two things. You hack in and they try and encrypt their data and then hold them to ransom. So that's one side of it. That's exactly what happened to Fat Face, the clothing company, the reason that they had to sell to Next, because they literally went bust because it was a ransomware and they had to pay the ransom. The second thing is that they will try and hack in. So, for example, Marks and Spencer's, when they got the hack done and their breach was for data, it was for information. So if you log into Marks and Spencer's using a password, regardless of if you've written it down anywhere, that bot has now got your email address and password. So it is definitely a case of using a different password. Right, let's just read the rest of it. And you won't remember them, and you then need a password tracker, but they have only one entry point. LastPass was recently hacked, so it's a potential risk. Yes, I mean, sorry, so the rest of this question from Dale was about using a password keeper, and then, of course, it's only one, all your passwords in one place. But that's not actually correct. The reason is that with a password keeper, it's encrypted. So you would need the key to unencrypt the passwords anyway. If you've got your password stored on a spreadsheet and I get into the spreadsheet, I can seal the passwords, and they're in it. They're in their raw form, which means I can basically use that password. Whereas if you've got if you're using a password keeper, if I was to try and break into it, because I haven't because it's encrypted, I wouldn't necessarily be able to see the password. The other thing as well is that you're always going to have the multi-factor identification. So, for example, when you're using a password keeper, you would log in using your email address and password and then a second form. So whether you're using like a Microsoft Authenticator or it pings your mobile with a code. So there's different ways that you're going to protect it. It's not just a one root, one password. So yeah, there isn't a 100% protected way. But the thing is with passwords as well is that Microsoft is also going down the route of passwordless, which means you effectively would log in without using a password, but you would need to use a multi-factor identifier, which would then also either use facial recognition or fingerprint. So, but it's all about having a continuous movement of passwords. So, hence why the passwordless one. But yeah, there's definitely different ones. How can you, next question from David is, how can you monitor dark web when it is disconnected sites that do not advertise on each other? So, okay, so with our tools, we are constantly monitoring the dark web so that as soon as anything is made available with that domain, it will ping up and it will tell us. Because imagine the dark web where these things are being advertised is they're effectively a bit like eBay and things like that. So, and they're on different marketplaces and whatnot. So our tools will be scanning those for your domain. So anything at all with your domain on it, it would show up. As soon as it hits the dark web, it would show up. We would then send you an email saying, right, you've had this breach, and then you've just got that more information to be proactive to go on and just update any of the passwords. So, but yeah, it is an automated tool, and that we scan it in multiple places, and that are available on the dark web. Right, okie dokie. I think, have we got any other questions before we delve into doing a dark web scan? Right, okie dokie. So let's look at doing some scans. Okie dokie. Right, so I'm going to now just jump across into a different screen. Right, okay, so hope everyone can see that. I've now run into a different screen. So this is So3 Hub. Thank you very much for giving your permission for us to do a scan. So let's have a look. So first of all, we're going to see how many exposed credentials there are. So we're looking at 3. It's coming up with, and as I say, there's we give an explanation on the different types of credentials. And also anyone that does want us to do this scan for them, even if we don't have time today on the webinar, I will still make sure that we do this scan for you and email it to you. So yeah, you can always just, if you don't want me to go through your scan, then you can always put it in the chat and just put, please don't go through, and we'll sort out a scan and email it to you separately. So, and also you've got my details from earlier. So if someone's watching this not in real time, then you can still email me, and I will I'll honour it and send you a free dark web scan. So it looks like there's a main password. Again, as we can see, we won't always necessarily know the exact origin. The reason we wouldn't necessarily know the origin is because sometimes passwords are traded in various ways. So for example, you've got where it came from. You would advertise it and say this is where it's come from. But then if someone buys that data and then sells it somewhere else, sometimes you can lose the origin. But with this one, there's definitely an admin password and 5DE. So this could be, and also what we'd say is there's an older date. Now, with it being an older date, there's potentially that actually this data is no longer, but it's just a really good way of being able to search for the password and just check to see if it is still being used somewhere else. Because I'm not sure about you, but time absolutely flies, and you always think, oh well, actually, I've updated passwords relatively recently, and then actually, oh no, it was 5 years ago. So so we've got 3 compromises there. Again, we send you a little bit more information about the dark web. But yeah, overall, we'd say pretty good. But as I say, we will email this report across to you. So we then jump back. Let's have a look who's next. Right, we've got, let's go with ICE. Here we go. Right, hello Paul from ICE. Let's look at. Right, got yours open, just need to share it. Right, so thanks Paul for letting us share this one. So we've got it's the domain again. So we're looking at 57 credentials. Now remember as well with this, obviously, the bigger the business, the more email addresses that you've got floating around there, potentially the more credentials that are going to be out there. So, you know, this is the thing. But if we just go through, and as I say, I'm not going to really do too much on this thing, but what we can see from this is there's multiple email addresses and then there's multiple password hits. And obviously some of them you may recognise, but often what this is more to do with is if you've got the person on there as a report, you can just have a gentle conversation with them and just ask them to update any passwords that they may have. So as I say, I'm not going to sort of go through it too much, but yeah, there's definitely quite a few different passwords and some of them similar passwords. So again, often with businesses that have been going around for a while, passwords 20 years ago, it was okay to stick post-it notes on monitors with the passwords. So, but again, we can even see on here, you've got the person's first name and their surname. And then if we see what their password hit is, actually you've got capital SHA. So, you know, there's a very good chance that actually that one is a legitimate password. So, but again, I will be emailing these reports to you all, so don't worry. Right, who else have we got? We've got, as I say, we'll just do a couple more. But as I say, if we haven't done yours, don't worry. We will be emailing you separately, so don't worry. Right, and then let's just jump into one more. Here we go. We've got Ether-Solutions. So again, thank you very much for coming forward with that one. So we've got 13 exposed credentials. So so we've obviously got one main big email address that's being used, and definitely just from sort of looking at this, there is an obvious password that begins capital ETH. So that you know, just looking at these sort of different metrics, but there obviously are multiple passwords, and there's a few certainly as well. We can see LinkedIn. Now also with date trackers and things, often when the first hit came up, but there could be multiple hits along the way. So yeah, as I say, there's quite a few on there, and again, this one is mainly showing all of the passwords that are available, whereas other hits, it's just going to actually tell you what potential ones there are. So yes, that's 13 on there. So right, okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'll call it there, just because, as I say, we've got lots of different ones, and obviously, as I say, but do please, go in the in the chat box now. Do please just drop us a message with your domain, and we will go through, create the report, and we'll make sure that that's sent to you by tomorrow latest. So yeah. But as I say, if you've got any questions at all, we're always here to help. As I say, you can go onto our website as well and just do the contact chat. We've got a chat bot there as well. So yeah, do feel free to sort of fire us any questions. But again, whoever asked about the network penetration testing question, that's a great question, because it is so many of these different areas of cybersecurity. They can be quite confusing, and it's enough fun just to keep up with them for ourselves, let alone for you guys just that you just want to actually focus on your business, but you don't want to be hacked. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. Do please reach out, and as I say, if you look up Giles Cleverly on LinkedIn, it will be great to connect on there. So enjoy the rest of your day.